Hi, welcome to the inaugural episode of the Counterfeit Emotions podcast, the place where we get to understand emotions and live our most authentic lives. I'm really grateful that you're going on this journey with me because it has been quite a journey for me, and I hope that as the episodes progress that it can be an incredible journey for you too, to understand what's going on inside your heart, understand what's going on in your body, in your relationships, with work, with all of the struggles in life, how every decision comes down to an emotion. And this episode, because it's the inaugural episode, I'm going to share the origin story of how counterfeit emotions came to be a thing. And not only that, also share how people are now calling me an emotionologist. And I want to share that I'm not a psychologist, but I am an emotionologist, someone that studies the emotions, studies the heart. Just like a psychologist studies the psyche, an emotionologist studies the emotion or the heart. The origin story for me started with one of the greatest trials and also one of the greatest blessings of my life, where I had someone that I loved um, who didn't love me anymore. And because of that, it it created an immense amount of pain for me and for those around me. And I felt abandoned. I felt completely alone. I felt as if the world was collapsing. And there's a phrase from history where a particular character talks about wanting a mountain to land on top of them and to get rid of the pain. And that's where I was at. I was at a place in my life where I had experienced pain greater than I had ever thought possible, greater than definitely than ever I wanted, and pain that I don't wish upon anyone else. And at the same time, I'm so grateful for that pain because that pain is what brought me here today. That pain is what brought me to this podcast. That pain is what gave me the ability to break out of old habits and be able to say, it's time to take a look at life differently. And when I was at my lowest point, where the pain was so immense, I did want a mountain to fall on top of me to stop the pain. That's when I felt also the deepest love. I felt the deepest love from my Father above and from Christ. And in that, I had to reframe the concept of pain because the pain was so deep that it became unfathomable to me. And my entire life, and I don't know if this is how you feel as well, but my entire life, I always thought that pain was on one side of a big, impenetrable wall, that pain was over here, and that love and joy were on the other side of the wall. That I either got to experience pain or I had love and joy in my life, but I didn't have both. That because of this wall, they were separate, they were exclusive. And when I was going through this experience, when the pain was so immense that I did want that mountain to fall on top of me, I also felt God's love in a way that I've never felt before, in a way that became unfathomable because I was experiencing both at the exact same time. And my brain said, wait a minute, there's pain and then there's joy. There's pain and then there's love. How are these mixed? How are these combined? And I realized that I had been labeling this side of the wall pain when this side of the wall wasn't pain at all. This side of the wall was named misery. And I get to choose where I put my pain. I can bury it underneath the slime and sludge of misery, or I can elevate it and honor it on the side of love and joy. And when I was weeping because of the pain, but then also weeping because of the immense love that I felt in my heart, I realized, wait a minute, pain can exist at the same time as love and joy. And not only can it exist, but it can become part of love and joy. Not I feel the pain and then I feel the love, I feel the pain, then I feel the joy, but coexisting together as one. And all of a sudden, the pain became a sacred sorrow because it was being elevated, it was being honored, it was being lifted on the side of love and joy. And when this happened, it broke my brain for a minute because I said, well, then how have I been calling this side of the wall pain my whole life? And the reason why is because on this side of the wall was the counterfeit. On this side of the wall was the counterfeit of pain, which is misery. And by definition, misery is the absence of joy. It is exclusive and there is a wall. And I thought, how have I been calling this side of the wall pain my whole life? Because I thought pain was bad. It meant I was bad if I was experiencing pain, or my situation was bad, or something around me was bad. And I realized that pain is actually a gift, and that misery is its very insidious counterpart. That misery is what keeps us trapped. And pain is one of the few emotions that's not meant to be held. One of the few authentic emotions. Let me make sure I specify that. It's one of the few authentic emotions that are not meant to be held. If you look at joy, joy is meant to be held. Love is meant to be held. It's meant to become part of us, but pain is not. Pain is one of those emotions that's meant to come into us, move us to action, and then it releases. But misery does such a good job at counterfeiting pain that we think misery is pain. And I realized there were two elements of misery that were the components or the basis of misery. And the first was blame, the second is shame. Pain is inevitable. We have to feel pain. It's a part of life that is actually meant to help us grow. It helps us move into action. Pain is a motivator. You can't ignore pain. You have to do something with it. But misery is optional. And let me say that one more time. Pain is inevitable. Misery is optional. We get to choose what side to put our pain on. If we bury our pain underneath the sludge and gunk of misery, then what happens is that pain that comes into our body that's supposed to move us to action and then move through us, it's meant to be felt, not meant to be held, all of a sudden gets trapped. And that slime of pain, that tar of misery traps the pain, so that the pain just cycles over and over and over again in our souls. But once we scrape away that tar, that gunk, and we put pain on the side of joy, we put pain on the side of love and elevate it, all of a sudden it's doing its job. And its job is to get us to move into action. And because of that elevation, the pain becomes a sacred sorrow. And that's what I experienced as I was weeping uncontrollably and felt that love, because I finally surrendered the pain. I finally let go of the blame. I finally let go of the shame. And I surrendered the pain to God. I surrendered the pain to Christ and said, I can't take this anymore. This pain is too much. Please take it from me. And when I did that, when I let go of the blame and shame and just asked, how is this pain meant for me? I felt that love. I felt that joy. I felt that embrace where all of a sudden I had to reframe pain. And that was the start of the origin of Counterfeit Emotions. That was the origin story, along with two other really important events that kind of put all of this together. And the second was that I was part of a men's group that I had a friend who gave me a call one day, and he said, "Hey, Curtis, are you a nice guy?" And I was so proud. I'm like, yeah, I'm a nice guy. And if you would have asked anyone a decade ago, who is Curtis, they would have said, oh, he is the nicest guy on the planet. And people did say that. And it was something that I wore as a badge of honor, that I'm this fantastic, nice guy that everyone knows that how nice I am. And this guy's name was Ollie. And he said something that totally took me off guard. He said, "Hey, Curtis, did you know the nice guy is the most despicable person on the planet?" And I was like, "What? What are you talking about? I just barely told you I am the nice guy. And now you're telling me I'm despicable." I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "The nice guy is not honest." And I was like, "Wait a minute. Now you're calling me a liar too. What's going on here?" And he said, "The nice guy's manipulative." And I was like, "Okay, this is too much. You're going too far here." And he said, "Think about it. Think about it. When was the last nice thing you did?" And so I thought for a minute, and I was like, "Well, I did the dishes." And he said, "Okay, why? Why did you do the dishes?" And I said, "Well, I wanted to be nice." He said, "Exactly. You wanted to be nice, and let me tell you what that means. You wanted to manipulate." And I was like, "What? What is going on here?" And I thought about it. I thought about, why did I do the dishes? What was the motivation behind me doing the dishes? And he was right. My motivation was to get something in return. I was being nice, trying to get something back for being nice. And so then we went to the idea, well, the nice guy is dishonest. And he explained that the nice guy will say what you want to hear. He won't speak truth. He won't lean into hard conversations. He'll be the placater. He'll be the doormat. He will be the one that's the yes man. That's the nice guy. Instead of being direct, instead of being honest, instead of having hard conversations done in love, the nice guy, he'll say whatever you want to hear so that he doesn't have to get into any type of conflict. And when he said this, it hurt, because my whole life, I was the little kid at church that held the door open for the old ladies. I was the one that would volunteer first because I wanted to be nice. And I thought the nice was a virtue. And it totally caught me off guard. And I said, in my brain, I was like, well, if I'm not supposed to be nice, what is the virtue? What am I supposed to be? And that's when it struck me that there is a virtue that looks and acts and feels like nice, but instead of being counterfeit, it's authentic. And that virtue is kindness. That virtue is kindness instead of niceness. We think that being nice is being a peacemaker, and it's not. Being nice is being a nice maker. And there's a big difference between being a nice maker and being a peacemaker. A peacemaker will have difficult conversations because they know that when they have those conversations with the other person, it's going to end in peace. Nice making doesn't actually get to peace, definitely not inside the person being nice, but then it doesn't address any destructive behavior with the other person. And I realized after this conversation, which was really tough, that he was right. That the nice guy, there's a reason the nice guy finishes last. And that's because he subjugates himself to everyone else's whims. He has no boundaries. He doesn't understand even what a boundary is. And that was me. That was me 10 years ago. I was a chronically nice guy. And I'm happy to say that, hi, everybody. I'm Curtis, and I'm now a recovering nice guy. And when I made that realization, I thought back to the experience of when I started to understand the difference between pain and misery. And I started to put these two together and thinking, wait a minute, pain and misery, kind and nice. Are there other emotions out there that may look and act like this, where one is truly authentic and one is counterfeit? And at the time, I didn't have that term. I didn't have the term counterfeit emotions. Instead, I was just trying to figure things out and try to research and try to understand what I was learning through the blessings of some of the hardest trials of my life. And I went to lunch with a friend. His name is Jesse. It's funny because when we were kids, I'm a bit older. I was his babysitter. He and his twin brother, and I would babysit Thomas and Jesse. And now he's a dear friend and an advisor, and I love him to death. And he had such an important impact in my life as I was going through this trial, and I was experiencing the pain. We went together to lunch, and I sat down, and he said, "How are things going?" He knew a little bit about what I was going through, and I just unloaded on him. I just kind of barfed all over the table with all of my troubles and all of my misery. And he said something so important. He said, "Curtis, life doesn't happen to you. It happens for you." And I was like, wait a minute. You must not have heard. Let me go through all of these things, the litany of offenses and the things that are going wrong in my life. And he said, stop. He said, stop, Curtis. Stop. Life doesn't happen for you. Excuse me. Life doesn't happen to you. Let's try that again. And he said, Curtis, stop. Stop. Life doesn't happen to you. It happens for you. And when he said that, it hit so hard. And I had to just stop, and I couldn't say anything for a minute. And he said, all of these things, everything you just told me, all of these things are for your good. And at the moment, I was just like, how is this for my good? Horrible things are happening in my life. How is this for my good? I'm experiencing so much pain. How is this for my good? And that was the right question to ask, because those words haunted me for weeks. And I was playing the victim. I was saying, this is happening to me over and over again. Can you believe that this happened to me, and this happened to me, and this happened to me? But the truth was, they were all happening for me. And part of the reason I'm here on this podcast today is because these things, they really did happen for my good. At the time, I didn't understand it. At the time, I couldn't see how all these injustices were happening for me. But looking back, I see exactly why they were happening for me. Because I needed it. I needed this in my life so that I could understand the concepts behind counterfeit emotions, that I could understand how I could become a different person, a better person, a more authentic me. That's exactly why it was happening for me. And later, I realized not only was it happening for me, but it could also happen through me. And that's why we're talking today, is because if I ask a different question, instead of how is this happening to me, going from victim to victor and saying, how is this happening for me? I can ask, how can this happen through me? And step up and to a different level called vessel. And that happened shortly before one of my best friends, Jerry Williamson. He and I had an amazing relationship. We met in college. One of the funniest people you'll ever meet. He was going through very similar trials, and he was experiencing a tremendous amount of pain. And I had just purchased a new house, and Jerry would come over, and he and I would sit in my house together, and we would talk for hours and hours and hours. And every time he'd leave, he would say something so funny. He'd be like, Curtis, I hate you. And I'm like, Jerry, why do you hate me? And he said, because you make me cry. Every time I'm here, you make me cry, and I hate crying. And it was that kind of conversation where we just opened our hearts to each other, where these two bearded men sat in a living room and saw each other's souls and felt each other's pain and had such compassion and love and empathy for each other. And he would come over again and again, and we would sit and we would talk and we would cry, and he'd be mad that I'd make him cry. And one time I even remember I was digging out dandelions out of my front yard, and I had a war with dandelions. I was going to make sure my grass was completely free. And so I was digging out the dandelions out of the grass, and Jerry came over, and in his very humorous way, like, "Hey Jerry, grab a little tool and we'll dig these out together." He's like, "Nope, I'm just going to sit here and you are going to make me cry while you dig out dandelions." And so we did. We sat there, and I dug out dandelions, and he sat in this chair right by me, and we both cried, and we both talked, and we both understood each other's souls at a deep level. And shortly after that, Jerry moved to Arizona, where we couldn't sit and cry together. We couldn't sit in the same room or pick out dandelions. And Jerry was alone. And he was alone. Not only did he not have the support group that he had, but he was alone emotionally. And part of the things that Jerry dealt with was a tremendous amount of shame. And shame was one of those counterfeits that is the strongest of all the counterfeits. And if you look at the emotional frequency of emotions, shame is on the very bottom. It is the very lowest emotion, right along with apathy that you can feel. And Jerry experienced a tremendous amount of pain in his life, but he also experienced a tremendous amount of shame. And he was in Arizona. We didn't have the chance to sit down night after night and talk. And he would call on occasion, and I would call him, and those conversations were great. One day he called, and I happened to be in Oregon running a race. It's called the Hood to Coast relay race. And we would go from Mount Hood down to the coast of Oregon. And I heard Jerry's voice, and he'd shared something with me that he felt a tremendous amount of shame around. And I said, Jerry, are you okay? Do I need to fly down to Arizona? Because I will. And he said, no, I'm okay. But the truth is, Jerry wasn't okay. The truth is, I did need to go to Arizona, but I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't know how much pain he was suffering in silence. I didn't realize the amount of shame that was consuming him. And a few nights later, I was at dinner and I got a call from Jerry's former spouse asking if I knew where Jerry was. And in my heart, I knew exactly where he was. This is Jerry. And the pain and the shame overcame him. The misery and the shame overcame him. And he left this life at his own hands. And I'm not okay with how he left this life. I'm not okay with the fact that he didn't understand the difference between guilt and shame, that he didn't understand the difference between pain and misery, that he didn't understand that those emotions are all valid, that it's okay for every emotion that comes in because every emotion is a messenger. Even the counterfeit emotions are messengers. And he didn't understand that. And because of that, he's no longer with us. Because of that, I miss him deeply. Because of that, I no longer get a call and laugh and cry with my friend Jerry. And that's why we're doing this podcast. That's why Counterfeit Emotions is becoming the movement that it is because there is a difference. There is a difference. And I got to participate in a conference where Michelle Craig, she was given a speech, and it was the most beautiful speech. And she talked about how every emotion can be counterfeited except for peace. Peace is the only emotion that can't be counterfeited. And when I say that, I want you to think about in your heart, how did you just feel when I said that? Did you feel the truth of that statement? Did you feel the peace of knowing that peace can't be counterfeited? Ask yourself, what are you feeling in your heart right now? Do you feel the truth of it? And when Michelle Craig said those words, all of these experiences with Ollie and with my own trials and with Jerry and with understanding these dyads or pairs of emotions, all of it came together into one concrete whole that said, there is a counterfeit for every authentic emotion except for that one. And that one emotion is peace. And when I made that realization that, wait a minute, there is a counterfeit for every emotion, I dug deep. I researched and did focus groups for years, trying to understand all of the different emotions. And if you ask Brene Brown, she did a survey with over 7,000 people and asked them to tap into their emotions in the moment. So not a cerebral exercise, but an emotional or a heart exercise. She said, tap into your emotions, and what emotion are you feeling right now? And according to her research, they could only come up with 3: mad, sad, and glad, happy, distraught, or sadness, and then anger. Those were the only 3 that people were able to respond with. And that baffled me. Why are we not able to understand our emotions at a deeper level? And I was so astonished. I'm like, why haven't I learned this my entire life? Why haven't I learned this at school or church or home or scouts or anywhere, that there's such a thing as a counterfeit emotion? And so I dug and I researched and I dug deep, and I said, I've got to get a book, or I've got to find something, a workshop, a retreat. I've got to do something. This is so important to understand the difference between guilt and shame, guilt being healthy and shame being destructive, of pain and misery, of kind and nice. I said, how have I never learned that these counterfeits exist? And I realized that the amazing people in my life, the reason they didn't teach me this is because it's not out there. There is nothing. The closest thing I found was a Buddhist principle called near enemies and far enemies. And that's not a one-for-one comparison by any means. And I said, okay, if it's not out there, then it's my job to get it out there so that the people that are experiencing shame in their lives or experiencing misery can transform that misery into pain and create a sacred sorrow, that they can transform the shame into guilt, which helps us move forward and make amends and repair. Guilt is actually a beautiful, healthy, important emotion that drives us away from suicidal ideation, from bullying, from criminal behavior. Guilt drives us out of those behaviors. Guilt takes us out of addiction. Shame is the one that puts us directly into those behaviors. And understanding the difference is so important. This is why we're doing the Counterfeit Emotions podcast. This is why I'm writing the book of Counterfeit Emotions. This is why it's becoming a movement, is because it's so important to understand the difference between counterfeits. And each week we're going to have the conversation. We'll bring in special guests as well, have the conversations around each of these dyads of emotions. We'll talk about the difference between guilt and shame, the difference between how kind is direct and boundaried and safe, and how nice is never safe because there are no boundaries. We'll talk about the difference between excellence and the very insidious perfectionism and how that keeps us trapped. We'll talk about deep subjects like the pain and the misery, and how to deal with the pain and remove the misery so we're no longer the victim. We'll get into all of the different dyads. We're going to have some amazing guests, and I'm so grateful that you're willing to join me on this journey so that you can live your most authentic life and find the one emotion that has no counterfeit, and that's peace. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.